Good afternoon, everyone. So this is was supposed to be a wonderful reception at the Alfândega do Porto nearby the Douro River, enjoying the port wine and everything else. But unfortunately, the pandemic has not allowed us to have a welcome reception. And we thought that a good way to replace it, although we would always be celebrating the 30th anniversary of the conference, we thought that a good way to replace the welcome reception would be to have this kind of session celebrating the 30 years of this series of the EuCNC conference, now jointly with the 60 Summit, and to pick some less young guys. I don't know if the definition holds, but I don't want to offend anyone sitting here in this panel. But before I present you the people that are here with me that I know for decades, I can measure that in decades actually. We have a short video just to give you a perspective of what happened in the last 30 years in our area. So can you please run the video? Okay, so this was trying to put in 3 minutes, 30 years of history of the conference together with the framework programs and the evolution of the several generations and so on. In case you want to take a look in all these editions you have on the website of the conference, one of the pages that has all the history and so on. So with a lot of photos and a lot of things. So just for the guys that I've attended many of these editions. You can find probably photos of yourself there. But okay, but the idea for this afternoon is to get together and have a non-serious discussion. This is not a formal panel. So we are not going to discuss the future of 6G and what are the directions of 6G and all this kind of thing. But just start from the past and probably discuss the future as well. So let me introduce the people that are sitting here. So again, myself, you saw me this morning, but just in case you missed this morning session. So I'm Luís Correia, I'm with IST, the University of Lisbon. And I've been for the last years the chair of the steering committee of EuCNC. Then on the right corner, at least in my screen, it's on the right upper right corner, you see João da Silva, former director of the European Commission, which actually launched this conference 30 years ago. And he's retired now, as you may have seen from the website. Then below João, and I'm just talking about the photos, of course, or the videos, you have Werner Moore, that most of you know as well. So Werner also participated in many of these years of history of these conferences and mobile communications. He's retired now as well. He was with Siemens and then Nokia Siemens and then Nokia. I think I didn't miss any of the companies, right? It's more or less like that. And then on the left corner, we have someone that is not retired, right, Bernard? You are not retired, at least not yet.
That's correct.
Bernard is currently with the European Commission, so he's the deputy head of unit that is responsible for this area of mobile and wireless communications, let's put it this way, and communications and 6, 5G, and in general, future networks, all these things. And Bernard has also been for many, many years. I'm not sure if you were since 91, 92, but if we were not, it was about that time that you, 95, okay. So it's close enough, close enough. So as I said, we are going to chat, let's say, for half an hour, and then we can move to another platform where you can really meet in small groups, this Wonder.me platform, which I'll explain in a minute. But the idea was to chat a little bit, and of course, the first question has to go to João, and it's the usual question in these circumstances. João, was it worthwhile to start it 30 years ago?
Well, I mean, first of all, I mean, hi, everybody. I think we could certainly answer the question as to, was this a success, 30 years of success? I think there are a few things we have achieved. One was the consolidation of the relationship between industry and academia. We had, from the very beginning, a very good ambition to act, and we were willing to take risks, which today I don't think is necessarily the same. We also had a strong effort towards standardization that helped, to a large extent, to make things possible. And there was a good coupling of research and development with regulations. Those were the essential successes that I can claim looking back at these 30 years. Now, there are things that went less well. Things like, well, when we acted in joint efforts, there was not necessarily the acknowledgement of so-called reciprocity rules. There was perhaps too much openness on regarding non-European actors. There was, from an industrial point of view, sometimes a lack of action that was very much needed. And there was perhaps, and this was for me the worst that could have happened, was that many of the so-called industrial captains looked at the R&D as a short-term affair and never as a long-term affair, to an extent that one of the captains of industry from Alcatel once said that he was proud of being an industry without factories. So this is, for now, as a beginner, to just quickly start the debate.
Thank you, João. Werner, from the industry viewpoint, was it worthwhile to have these links with academia and to start these collaborations with other companies and all these kind of things, or was it more a waste of time and money somehow?
Oh, I think it was a big success. During the 90s, Jean is well aware of that. It was sometimes difficult to cooperate between industry. We made some experience during the development of UMTS, where we had sometimes big discussions, controversial discussions, but the program, and that was ACTS, helped very much that we came to an agreement in Europe and in ETSI at the end of the day. And I would say in this period, especially between the big companies, we learned how we can cooperate, in which phase we should cooperate, and where it's difficult to cooperate. Then you asked for the academics. Usually these consortia always have academics, industry and SMEs and R&D centers involved. And that's always a good mixture. Not only industry, because they have only the business perspective, we need also the different views and the different perspectives. And that, I think, was also important. And I have always said the framework program is providing a frame and also a legal framework for cooperation. And especially companies can cooperate without risks from antitrust law. That's providing, yeah, you're smiling, but I think it's also important. It provides this framework where many people can cooperate. There was a lot of networking. We later got the technology platforms. Then we got PPPs, more and more complex instruments. Now there is a preparation of a joint undertaking in this sector. But the important thing is what we built up in the last decades were these networks between many people. And I think this is only working because many people know each other. And all this cooperation is based on trust. And for that, people need to meet. It would be nicer we could meet in Oporto today. But in this sense, I would say it was a big success.
Thank you, Bernard. Then what's your viewpoint now after all these years?
Well,
Overseeing everything, you're still there, let's put it this way. So
yeah, I think it's, I can only agree with what was said, even though I don't have the 30 years back off. I only have 25 years back off, which gives me still a little bit of a perspective. What I find is that this type of question is very much a European question. I mean, when we talk to US people or to people in Asia, they seem to believe that what we are doing in Europe is great. I mean, this type of collaborative environment that we are putting in place is something that sometimes they would like to have themselves. Not all of them, but for instance, but many times, very often, it comes in a discussion that they are very much, let's say, sometimes a bit jealous to the kind of environment that we are able to put in place in Europe. And what I find great in the way we have been able to construct this story, of course, there have been ups and downs, lows and ups. I mean, things that work better than others. But I think the system has been, in spite of the bureaucracy that you could expect from something which is linked to a big organization, a big public organization like a commission, I think the system has been able to react very fast. I wouldn't say in real time, but in quasi-real time, to such an extent that most of the trends that we have seen in the projects and also reflected in the EuCNC conference and the previous editions of the EuCNC conference, they very much were anticipating and visionary compared to what would come on the market later. And I remember, for instance, this is something that I will always remember in my mind. I mean, in the late 90s, I think we were not even at the level of FP5. There was a guy from Ericsson that probably some people remember. Now he's working for universities by the name of Frank Reichert. And he had a mobile phone, and he was showing his mobile phone, and he was stating, in the future, we can use this to take pictures of nice presentations like this one and to send it to our friends. I mean, no one had ever thought of this type of application that, you know, you go to conferences, you take pictures of the slides and you send them to your friends. But he was just depicting this at a moment when everyone was using 2G or was thinking a little bit of 3G and what could be applications for 3G. So I think this conference and this program has been really instrumental to raise awareness in Europe of the big trends which were coming up and which were also coming much earlier than the equivalent regulatory developments that would then be needed later to make it possible that it would deploy. But I think it's a very good experience that we have had here to kind of anticipate and to prepare the stakeholders and the constituencies in Europe to be aware of what was coming up in terms of technology and how would be the opportunities and how to deploy it. I think the last edition we have had on that is the incorporation of the verticals in the program and in the conference. I think Europe was basically one of the very early regions to move in that direction at a moment when all the rest of the regions were stating, outside of EMBB, there is nothing. I mean, verticals will not fly. So I think this capacity, as long as we are able to maintain this anticipation capability, I think the system will have a value and it will bring some added value to the stakeholders.
Yeah, let me say something about Bernard that you mentioned it. I think it's very important that. Of course, myself being from academia, I think it's very valuable in Europe, which is, as you said, colleagues from other regions in the world, meaning North America and also in many countries in the Asia-Pacific region, they are jealous of what you have here in Europe with this framework program. And I can confirm that, meaning it's very much true. These projects, these framework programs gave us, academia, the opportunity to have collaborations with companies and to participate in projects in this consortium form, which reshapes completely the way that you do research. Because you can still continue to do the very fundamental research, full of matrices and integrals and whatever you want to write in the paper and solve in Mathematic or MATLAB. But in conjunction to that, you can look from the perspective of the applications. You can have real data coming from operators or the real data from industry that tell you what are really the noise figure for an amplifier or whatever you can think of. And this really completely puts research, applied research, into a completely different perspective. And I remember talking to many colleagues again in the United States, Canada, in Japan, and so on, and they were jealous of us. And I remember being in some projects still in the 90s and having Japanese companies, and João most probably remembers these Japanese, where we were researching millimeter waves, which now is so fashionable. The very first project I was involved in the European Commission was mobile broadband systems, which was doing research at 60 gigahertz, which everyone these days talks about 6 gigahertz. So 30 years ago, we were doing research. We were really opening the stuff in millimeter waves. And we had many universities and companies knocking on the door to be part of this project. So I think from an academic viewpoint, and I'm sure that there are many colleagues all around Europe that share this perspective, that this has been a very valuable, I dare to say, for all sides. That has been a win-win for both academia, society at large, of course, because in the end, if all the players win, society wins as well. So what do you think will be the future now? What can we expect that somehow, I mean, we're not going to discuss research in 6G, but do you think that currently we can continue with these? Do you think that there will be changes? João, what do you think? Have you learned something from the past and not make the same mistakes in the future?
Well, that's difficult to say. But before I answer your question or try to answer your question, I forgot to mention that, I mean, since we have Bernard here, Bernard is one of the founding fathers of the content of the research program. And he may not accept that I say this, but he's the real thinker from the Commission side and has been so for hundreds of years since he's been there. And thanks to him, we have managed to isolate and identify the issues that needed to be tackled. And I wanted this to go on record because Bernard is too shy to say it himself. Now, what's ahead? What's ahead? First of all, I mean, I think that we're entering a world of expanding uncertainty. I mean, uncertainty is the rule of the day. We're transforming very rapidly human experiences, capabilities. We are creating new tensions. Global competition for the core elements of technology is going to be a very, very heavy, a very fundamental issue. As we move towards worlds which are more connected, because of IoT and because of communications in general, I mean 6G and so on, we are going to create a world which is more divided than ever. The fact that we're connected does not necessarily mean that we share the ideas. And one illustration of that is the COVID pandemic that was a very good illustration of the fragmentation of approaches that one can take. So insofar as technology is concerned, I think this is coming up. Uncertainty is going to be the rule of the day. I'll stop here for now.
Werner, what's ahead?
If you look back in the last 30 years and compare with today, we have seen a big change, for example, in industry. When you look to the 90s, there we had a lot of telecom companies in Europe which were involved in projects. And this changed significantly. There was a lot of consolidation, which is basically following that what George said. More global competition. There was more the need to merge companies, that companies can survive. And our sector is really experiencing this. And there is a big change in the last 30 years. On the other hand, what from an industry perspective we are looking for is that we maintain the standardization ecosystem what we have today. Today, we still have a global standardization ecosystem. And that is what we want to maintain. When you look at the 90s, there we had different standards in 2G. There was GSM, and especially the US were pushing for technology competition. In 3G, this somehow changed. We ended up with two standards, where one was dominating, but at the end of the day, also in 2G, the GSM was the dominating standard globally. But more companies were also entering that business. Then in 5G, we again had two standards, with one dominating, 5G, which was very much also influenced by Europe. And now 6G, which is coming up, is a new game. There we see a lot of IT companies are coming in. We will see much more IT elements. The networks are moving more towards IT. And I guess in 6G, we will see a quite different game than before, where we basically had cellular-based systems which were mainly designed for public network operators. In 5G, we are also now starting with campus networks, with private networks. I guess in 6G, we will much more moving in that direction. And I guess the landscape of companies will change again quite significantly.
Bernard, what's ahead?
Well, to be honest, I don't have a crystal ball, but I'm very much on the line of Joao when he says that uncertainty is going to be the rule of the game. And I suppose this goes together with a growing divide between those people who know and master the technology and those people who don't have the knowledge, not because they are stupid, but just because it's not their field or expertise, or they know they have other interest in life. And when I look at, and this is something we are suffering from in the Commission on almost a daily basis, when I look at the resistance that we can see for the deployment of 5G these days, for instance, it's not new, but what is new is, let's say, the magnitude of the resistance to the acceptance of the technology. And I have the feeling that more and more we will have to face some resistance by the population to whatever comes from the technology, because it's not green, because it's polluting, because it's damaging your brain or your whatever, for all sorts of reasons, which I will not dare to comment whether they are right or wrong. But this is a fact that we see more and more. And I think someone said in the panel, I think it was in the 6G panel this afternoon, said, we're not very good at PR in our industry. And so this was someone from industry was saying that. And I think we have to make a lot of efforts collectively to get the future technological developments be understood and accepted by the population and by the citizens, that they can understand that really they gain something out of it, and that it's not only something which is going to multiply the energy consumption by 10 or by a factor of 100 and contribute further to whatever kind of detrimental effect to the environment. And I think this kind of societal type of issues, in my view, we should pay much more attention to them. This is not new. This is not my view. I see many people said that in this conference and in other 6G conferences. This type of societal issues, be it affordability of the technology, be it access and coverage, be it cost, be it, let's say, friendly from the health perspective, I think all these elements would be needed to be much more expanded in the future than they have been up to now. And that's just a personal perspective.
My view here is coming from academia again, is that one of the things that I think that has changed a lot in these 30 years is really and that are some of the consequences of what Werner said and you all, is the perspective that we are having on how to do research and what is research about. If you look at the several generations, 5G for the first time, compared to the previous ones, does not have a new radio interface. It's just the 4G radio interface with a little bit touching here and there. And I think this is the consequence of, let's say, the lack of industry daring to did what did again 30 years ago, like exploring millimeter waves, and 30 years ago, which was something really out of the blue, what many people call blue sky research. And I think we lost a lot of these in industry. So we are achieving more and more the baby steps somehow. And this means that if there are other regions in the world are really taking this challenge of that are not just doing the baby steps, then this can be a real challenge for Europe in the end, because then we don't have the knowledge to take the largest steps and to implement disruptive things. And we are aware of one very good example of disruption, which is the iPhone, for obvious reasons, that had huge impact in Europe for obvious reasons as well. And I think it's common knowledge that Europe had the technology for the iPhone, so it was not a lack of having the technology, it was something else. And I wonder whether this will repeat itself these days concerning networks and systems and everything else. But okay, we can come back in 30 years from now when we celebrate the 60th anniversary of the conference, and then we can check how things have been, right? Okay, we are supposed to finish here. Of course, we could continue for hours discussing the things. I don't know if you want to say just a final sentence before we go to the gathering phase of this afternoon's celebration. João, any final words? Let's put it this way.
Perhaps two points. One is in what regards the future. Artificial intelligence is going to be taking a role which so far has been rather minimal. And the companies and organizations using data or will be requiring more and more massive quantities of data to operate efficiently. And a good example of that is the decision taken by the UK government to give away the information regarding the COVID pandemic to private industry, or at least this is in the making. Now, what happens there is that unregulated control of data holds the promise of abusive practices. This is point number one. Point number two is that we are entering the age of algorithm-driven approaches, where we gravitate to information silos of others who share the same ideas that we have. And this is particularly bad because it affects, I think, our democracy. So I'll stop here, just for the last two words.
Thank you, João. Werner, some final words for today's chatting?
Maybe something not directly related to the discussion. I'm seeing on your background Porto, and I remember we had once a social event in Porto when we had the conference in Aveiro many years back.
Oh, many years ago, yes.
That was very nice. Therefore, it would have been much nicer to be there, to meet you really in person. I hope this will come soon back again.
Thank you, Werner. Bernard.
Yeah, I really also hope that very soon we have the opportunity to meet in 3D. Now, if I look at the various editions of this conference in the last 30, 25 years, I think we have had ups and downs in terms of success, in terms of industrial positioning, as Werner mentioned. But I think one constant element, one thing that we have been able to count on all the time in Europe is really a very high-level, world-class academic and research system. I think Europe still has today a top-level academic system and research system in this domain. And I hope this is something we can continue to count on for many years to come, because, as Werner said, industries will probably change, shape, but we really have to exploit much better all this fantastic intellectual potential to create the new startups or the new champions, industrial champions of tomorrow. That's my perspective.
Okay, thank you, Bernard. So before I close, there's in the questions, the Q&A, there's someone is Bosco Fernandes, that some of you may know. And Bosco is asking, where are the cold beers? So indeed, before we go to the cold beers, let me share the screen just to show you two things. So bear with me with a minute. So, okay, can you see my screen now? Oh, sorry guys, something went wrong here. No, it didn't. So can you see my screen? No.
Yes.
You can? But I think, I'm not sure if, oh, you can. Okay, yes. So again, this is the page that you have on the in About. You have what is called the 30th anniversary tour. So you can browse through all the sessions, and you can find photos and a lot of stuff for you guys that want to think about a little bit about the past. You have what could be, let's say, gathered about the 30 editions. And the other thing that I would like to show you is this one here. No, it's not this one. Sorry, too many things open now. Sorry, guys. No, not this one. My apologies. Okay, this one. So if you go to the platform of the conference, you go to networking, And then you have here wonder.me. So if you click in these, it will bring you to the platform where we'll be meeting in a couple of minutes. So we just need to take a photo and to put your name, and then you enter into this platform that enables to chat with your friends like you were in a room and meeting people in a table. So bring your beers, like Bosco said, or glasses of white wine. I confess that myself, I will have a glass of white wine from the Douro region, obviously, could not be otherwise. So let's meet in this platform in 5 minutes from now, okay? So thank you for coming. See you in 5 minutes in this platform. We'll have the possibility to chat with each other in small groups. Thank you for coming then.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Luis. Thanks to all.